We made these memories for ourselves. Written by Thingssicant. Fandom, One Direction. Published July 4th, 2015. Summary. Based off the prompt, Louis surprises Harry with tickets to go see Ed Sheeran, and he has the whole night planned, leading up to an engagement. But nothing goes as planned. "I'm here to pick up a ring," Louis said, as he walked up to the man at the counter. "What's your last name?" the man asked. "Tomlinson," Louis said, biting his lip. This is it. He's going to pick up a ring that Harry would hopefully be wearing for the rest of his life. The man nodded at him and left him to grab the ring from the back. Louis tapped his fingers on the counter nervously. He had ordered the ring months ago. What if Harry hated it and refused to marry him? Shit, what was Louis doing? Harry was perfect. Why would he ever want to spend the rest of his life with him? And they were still so young, probably too young to get married. Fucked. Louis was so fucked. But it would be so worth it if Harry said yes. Louis shook his head. He was being stupid. Of course Harry would say yes. They'd been together for years now. He would have left already if he didn't want to be with Louis. He sighed and tried to calm down. He still hadn't even called Harry to tell him their plans for the night. He pulled his phone out, quickly dialing the number of Harry's work. "Happy Stems Florist, Harry speaking," Harry said through the phone. "Harry," Louis said, too nervous to have an actual conversation, "I'm taking you out after work tonight." Harry laughed. "Why so serious, Lou?" he asked. Louis shook his head. "No reason. I just... Wow," he gasped, looking at the man, showing him the ring. "I'll pick you up after work. Be ready, love you," he said before hanging up. "That looks perfect," he smiled. He grabbed the ring and looked at the engravement. "Forever and always," he smiled, admiring it. He had saved for a whole year to buy the ring, and it was finally in his hands. He sighed. He knew Harry would love it, and it relaxed him to know that. He placed it back in the box, and the man rang him up. "So, how do you plan to propose?" he asked. Louis smiled. "I got him floor tickets to see Ed Sheeran, his favorite," he said. The man nodded. "Have you tried to contact him? Sometimes they will do something special for it if you get a hold of them. I know one person who got to propose on stage." "Really?" Louis asked. "That's a good idea. I think I'll try it, thank you." Louis sent a tweet to Ed, not expecting anything in return. He put the ring in his pocket, still in shock that he was actually going to do this. He shook his head. He had to get home and get ready. He couldn't waste all day waiting for a tweet back that would probably never come. Louis looked down at the computer with wide eyes. He read the tweet over and over, trying to comprehend how it was real. "DM me and we'll set something up," Louis read aloud. He snapped himself out of the haze and quickly clicked the page to message him. He typed a bunch of things but ended up chickening out and writing, "Hey." He tried to distract himself while he waited for a reply and almost jumped when he heard the beep. What's his favorite song? Photograph. Sick. I've had this idea for a while now, but no one's asked yet. What is it? Well, you send me a bunch of pictures of you and your boyfriend that will play on the background, and in the end, you ask them. That sounds amazing. Just email a bunch to my tour manager, tell him where you're sitting, and we'll get a spotlight and stuff. Louis was speechless. Harry was going to flip. He got the email from Ed and started going through all the old pictures of himself and Harry. He swears he was not teary-eyed by the end of it, but Liam still laughed at him as he plopped down beside him on the couch. Louis groaned, shoving his face in a pillow, only making Liam laugh harder. "You're supposed to be my friend. Friends don't laugh at friends," Louis grumbled. Liam shook his head and pat Louis's back. "Getting a little emotional about the engagement, huh? Are you looking at all your old photos? How sentimental," Liam teased as he grabbed the laptop. "Why are you doing this anyway? Shouldn't you have been preparing for tonight? The reason why I had to get all the decorations?" he asked. Louis rolled his eyes. "Well, I was preparing for tonight," Louis said matter-of-factly. "I was talking to my good buddy Ed Sheeran, put on a slideshow of pictures on his backdrop before I propose. Liam looked at him with wide eyes. Bullshit, he mumbled before Louis showed him the messages. Harry's going to go nuts. Are you sure you want us to be here when you get back? Liam asked. Yes, of course, that's the plan. You, Niall, and Zane will be here after the show to celebrate. Niall's bringing the champagne, and you're cooking for us, Louis said. I know, we've been over this 1,000 times, Liam sighed. Let's just get started on the decorating now. And you still have to shower. You stink, he laughed. Oi, Louis shouted as he rolled his eyes and got up to start working. Louis played with his hair in the mirror a bit more and flipped Liam off when he laughed at him. He had put it up in a quiff because he knew that's how Harry liked it. But something about it just wasn't perfect, and everything about this night had to be perfect. Louis thought that anyway. Just go, your boy's waiting for you, Liam yelled at him from the living room. Louis sighed and walked out of the bathroom after one more shot of hairspray. How do I look? He asked nervously. Like a Disney prince about to propose to his future princess, Liam said cheesily. Louis rolled his eyes. You're a twat, you know that, he grumbled. Just make sure you put the pizza in by 9:30 and watch them, he said as he slammed the door shut behind himself. He shook his head. He was doing this. He was really going to propose to the love of his life. Louis parked outside of Happy Stems and walked inside the shop to get Harry. Mary smiled at him from behind the counter. Harry's in the back, just go get him, she said. Louis nodded and walked into the back room like he had so many times before. Harry looked at him and frowned. I don't think I can go out with you tonight, Lou, he sighed. Lou went pale. Why? He frowned. Harry shook his head. Zane was supposed to be here for his shift half-hour ago, and I can't leave Mary alone. He never showed up. We've called him like 10 times, and he hasn't picked up. Do you think we can go out tomorrow instead? You didn't have something special planned, did you? Harry asked. Louis shook his head. Fuck Zane. He wasn't going to let him ruin this. Let me try calling him. You go get ready, Louis mumbled, leaving the room. He called Zane a few times and was ready to throw the phone at the wall. He sighed, going in, ready to break the bad news to Harry. When he walked up to Harry, he just couldn't do it. Harry looked so perfect in a tie-dye crop top and with little flowers in his hair. He was going to make this the most special night for him and wasn't going to let Zane ruin it. Harry looked at him with wide eyes. So? He asked. Louis smiled. He was asleep, he lied. He'll be here in half-hour. Are you okay for that long, Mary? He asked. She nodded, smiling at them. You two go have fun. Don't worry about me. So, the opening act starts at 7:30, but will obviously be there a bit early. It's probably for the better, though, so we can get comfortable in our seats, Louis said as he started driving to the arena. Harry turned to him confused. Wait, what? He asked. Louis smiled and pulled the tickets out of his pocket, handing them to Harry. We're going to see Ed tonight. Harry looked at Louis with wide eyes, then leaned over and kissed his cheek. I can't believe this, he gasped. How did we, wait, Lou, these are floor seats, he frowned. You know we can't afford that, he said sadly. I had to pick up extra shifts next week just so that we could make rent. Louis pulled the car over. I've been keeping something from you, he sighed. I wanted to surprise you, but I think you should know now, so that you're not worrying about it all night. What is it? Harry asked, biting his lip. I've been signed to a team in Doncaster. I'm on an actual footy team, Harry, that pays really well. We don't have to scrape for rent anymore, he smiled. Harry looked at him in total shock. How long have you known? He asked. Couple weeks, Louis smiled. Harry hit his shoulder lightly, then kissed him, being barely able to hold back a blatant smile. Well, you could have told me. I've been working my butt off trying to put food on the table, he laughed. What a relief. Are we going to celebrate after the show tonight? Oh, we'll be celebrating all right, Louis said, but was interrupted by Harry's phone going off. Harry picked it up and instantly screamed, Niall, I'm going to see Ed tonight, at the top of his lungs. Louis laughed and rubbed his arm slightly. The excitement fell from Harry's face, and he started taking on a more serious tone within seconds. Louis watched on confused, but kept rubbing Harry's arm gently until he hung up. "What's going on?" he asked. Harry looked at him, completely crushed. "Niall was at a bar doing who knows what, and he broke his arm. That was the bartender, calling on his phone. We have to go pick him up and take him to the hospital," he frowned. Louis's face fell. "But Harry, the show." Harry shook his head. "Niall is practically family, Lou. I'm not letting some stranger take him to the hospital. We may still make it if we hurry," he sighed. Louis got a totally drunk Niall into the car while Harry apologized to the bartender. Niall had already given him his bullshit story on how he didn't mean to get so drunk, but Louis was far too furious with him to even listen. He had already called Liam to try and meet Niall at the hospital so he could still take Harry to the show and salvage part of the night. Harry got into the car with a sigh and let Louis take it from there. Louis sighed in relief when he finally saw Liam walking into the waiting room. He checked the time on his phone, then stood up, pulling Harry up with him. "We've probably missed the opening act, but we can still make it for Ed," he smiled. Harry nodded and ran off to the car excitedly after he hugged Niall and told him to feel better. Liam pat Louis's back. "Good luck tonight." "We'll hopefully be done by the time the show finishes," Louis nodded and gave him a thumbs up before chasing after Harry. Louis never drove so fast in his life. He honestly didn't care if he missed the first few songs, but it was important to Harry. All he knew was that he would definitely make it in time for photograph. When they got there, Louis checked to make sure he still had the ring in his pocket. Then he took Harry's hand and led him into the arena and to their floor seats. Harry smiled, looking at the stage, and then to Louis. "I can't believe we're here. I'm not even dressed for it. Look at you. You look amazing," he smiled. Louis laughed, shaking his head. "You look beautiful, darling. But you do still have some dirt on your cheek," he said, thumbing it off. "I've got to say, I'm loving you in crop tops. But where did the rest of your shirt go?" he asked. Harry blushed a bit. "My hair was in the way, so I was getting orders ready, so I cut it off and tied my hair back with it." Louis laughed, pulling him closer. "I love you so much," he smiled. "I love you too," Harry said, smiling back. "Let's take a picture. I want to remember this," he said. He pulled out his phone, but instead of going to take a picture, he frowned and started texting. "What's wrong?" Louis asked, placing a hand on the small of his back. "Zane still hasn't showed up yet. Do you think I should call him?" he asked. Louis shook his head immediately as the lights went down. "We'll check in the middle of the show, yeah?" Harry nodded and then screamed as Ed came on stage. Louis was more and more nervous as the show went on. He could feel the ring burning in his back pocket. His heart jumped as the next song started playing, the one he knew was Before Photograph. He rubbed his face with his hands, trying to relax and not show Harry how nervous he was. Harry leaned in, whispering in his ear. "Liam's called me like 10 times now. I'm just going to go to the bathroom and call him back. Make sure Niall's okay," he said. Louis shook his head. Can we please just wait? My favorite song is next," he said, trying to pull Harry back. Harry shook his head. "I'll be right back," he smiled, then he ran off. Shit, Louis thought as he waited nervously, hoping Harry would be back in time. He wasn't, of course, because every part of this night had to go wrong. Harry came back by the end of the song, and Louis pulled him into his arms. Ed saw them hugging and gave them a thumbs up. "I better be invited to the wedding," he laughed, and then he started to play the next song. Louis took Harry's hand, pulling him out into the empty hallway. He was furious, but he couldn't be mad seeing how upset Harry was. He wiped Harry's cheek with his thumb and sighed. "Baby, what's going on?" he asked. Harry shook his head and started crying harder. "Liam was cooking at our place. He left the stove on when he went to get Niall. There was a big fire and we lost most of our stuff," he cried. Louis's eyes went wide and he pulled Harry into his arms. "I'm so cold, Lou, and I probably don't even have any sweaters at home anymore. We probably don't even have a home anymore," he sobbed. Louis shook his head. "Come on, we'll buy you a hoodie here, then we'll go home and figure out what to do next, okay? Everything's going to work out, I promise. Louis had decided during the car ride home that this night was, in fact, the worst night ever. He was trying to think of all the new ways he could propose to Harry, but couldn't think of anything better than what he had already planned tonight. Harry pulled him out of his thoughts. "You have to drop me off at work. Zane never showed up and I need to help Mary close," he sighed. Louis shook his head. "Harry, no, you've been crying for the last half hour. You are in no shape to work," he said. Harry shook his head. "I don't have a choice," he mumbled. "Just drop me off. Maybe call Zane again. Make sure he's okay." Louis was going to kill Zane. Louis was able to get into his apartment once he finished speaking with the fire inspector. Niall and Liam were already inside, looking at him apologetically. "What did the guy say?" Liam asked. Louis shook his head. "That some idiot left the stove on and it burnt my apartment," he growled. Liam sighed. "I really didn't mean to. I was in such a rush to meet you at the hospital so you could go that I forgot about the pizza. Can you please forgive me?" he asked. Louis sighed and shook his head. He was done for the night. "Yeah, whatever," he sighed. "And I'm sorry too," Niall sighed. "They were letting me try all the different types of champagne before I bought it. One thing led to another and I fell off the table practicing my best man speech," he said. Louis couldn't help but chuckle. "You guys are both such idiots," he sighed. "I can't even believe you." He shook his head. Liam looked around. "Where's Harry anyway? How did the proposal go?" he asked, looking far more excited than he should be. "Well, he missed it, 'cause he had to call somebody back," Louis said, and Liam's face fell. "And then Zane never showed up for his shift, so after crying for half an hour, he's gone to work. I think this has to be the worst night of my life." He said this as Zane stumbled into the apartment. "This has to be the best night ever," he shouted, then stopped to look around. "What happened here?" he asked. Louis grabbed him by the shirt, throwing him against the wall. "Where the hell were you tonight?" he screamed. "Whoa, relax. I just wanted to see you propose, so I called Ed up and got a pass. I couldn't see it too well, though," he frowned. "How did it go?" he asked. Louis was about to lose it. "How did it go? How did it go?" he asked, dropping his shirt. "First of all, you didn't show up for your shift, so Harry was worried about that all night. And then this idiot," he said, pointing to Niall, "couldn't pick up champagne without getting drunk, causing us to miss the opening act and take him to the hospital. And then, when we finally get to the show, right, just as Photograph was about to play, with all our pictures, all of our memories, I start thinking something might go right. And then guess what happens? Liam calls to let Harry know that he was, in fact, burnt down our apartment. And then, while Harry cried the whole way home, I had to take him to the shop to finish off your stupid shift. I didn't even get to propose, and this has been the worst night ever. So don't come here telling me this is the best night ever, unless you can get me a new apartment, all new things, and Ed Sheeran to sing to my boyfriend while I propose," he yelled, punching a wall as he finished. All the boys looked at him with wide eyes until Ed coughed from the doorway. "Well, he's got one of those things, and your landlord just said the room a floor up is open for you." So, Zane was mates with Ed Sheeran. Louis didn't know if he wanted to kill him for not telling him or kiss him for making all this work out the way it did. Not much was left in the apartment. Louis was quite sad about that, but he didn't have time to think about it now. He knew all their pictures were saved since he sent them to Ed, and he was thankful for that. But since the people upstairs had just moved out, they were given that one. It even had a bedroom. Not just the studio apartment that they had before. Louis thought he and Harry would be sleeping, but Ed had a good pull on keeping stores open and getting free things. So within half hour, his new apartment was filled with furniture. Liam had managed to get more decorations and had set them up all around, making it look better than it had before. He offered to make a pizza, but Louis refused to let him touch the stove. They ordered it in from Harry's favorite place. That would probably be better anyway. Niall even managed to get champagne, this time without taste testing it. Louis looked around and still couldn't believe it had all worked out. Zane was almost right calling it the best night ever. Almost. So now Louis was waiting in his car for Harry to finish work. He felt bad that he would have to keep the surprise from Harry until he got home, but it would be worth it in the end. When Harry finally came out, Louis got out of the car and pulled him into a hug. "What a shit night," Harry sighed. Louis nodded, rubbed his back, just staying on the sidewalk for a while. "Let's just get going, yeah? Get all this sorted," Louis sighed. Harry nodded and got into the car, wiping his eyes again. "Louis, you missed our floor," Harry said when he stopped on the staircase. Louis shook his head. "No, come on, we'll deal with that tomorrow. I found us a place to stay tonight, and I think we both just need a good sleep," he said. Harry nodded and followed him up to the top floor of the building. Louis opened the door and let Harry go in first. The second he opened the door, Ed started to play photograph. Harry looked at him in shock and then turned to Louis for an explanation. Louis was down on his knee, holding the ring out. Harry put a hand over his mouth, completely speechless. "Harry Edward Styles, you are the most wonderful person I have ever met, and I have loved you since I was 18, long before we both thought the same thing. And all I can do is say that these arms are made for holding you, and I want to love you like you made me feel when I was 18 for the rest of our lives. Will you marry me?" he said, biting his lip. Harry teared up and nodded ferociously. "Yes, yes, of course," he cried. Louis slid the ring on his finger and pulled Harry into his arms. Ed kept playing, and they all celebrated what would probably be the most memorable night of their lives. Louis twirled Harry around the dance floor as everyone watched on. He couldn't help but think of how perfect this day was. Harry was now Harry Tomlinson, and Louis couldn't be more happier about it. They were currently having their very first dance to a new song he and Ed had written based off his proposal. They had all become really good friends with Ed after that night. Harry had probably seen a million of his shows by now, but still always raved of his performance of Photograph he played for them the night of their engagement. Louis spun him around one more time before the song stopped and everyone else joined them on the dance floor. "Good day so far?" Louis asked. Harry nodded. "Just as perfect as our proposal," he smiled. Louis looked at him funny. "But that was like the worst day ever," Louis laughed. Harry shook his head. "It was the best day because we decided to spend the rest of our lives together. But Liam literally burnt our apartment down. But we ended up with a better one." "But you missed the big proposal." "Only to get an even better private one," he smiled, the joy in his face making him the most beautiful thing in the world, or maybe he already was all the time. Louis shook his head. "You're crazy. But I love you, Louis Tomlinson, and I love you too, Harry Tomlinson." The end.